We have a trade to announce.
Hello, hello. Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those things where, it was like one of those things where it's like, we could do a show. Sometimes we do shows when we shouldn't do shows. And I don't know. Yeah, right. Yeah. I remember how much shit we caught for the Alex Stalock show. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sure we'll get to it. Like, there's going to be a game coming up. Like, I don't think it's, this isn't a Timo Meier trade. Oh, that's not good. All right, fix it. I will tap dance for a second here. Yeah, okay. So Puckguy's gonna finish his audio here. I'm just saying, like, obviously, Puckguy was just talking about like apologizing for not doing this sooner. Obviously, we try to be Johnny on the spot with this stuff. When stuff happens, we try to get on as quick as we can, and just a bunch of different things kind of prevented us from kind of getting on. And then also, like I'm saying, like, we got a lot of show for a 40-minute Alex Stalock show. So obviously we try to, sometimes we don't have a good filter for what like needs a show and what can wait and whatever. So I don't know. I'm not doing anything. Puckguy's not doing anything. Here we are to break down this trade. And obviously, I think talk about other trades to coming that are going to start coming and happening. I don't know where the thought is going, unfortunately. This is why we do shows with other people. Puckguy, how are we doing? Yeah,
I'll just go.
This whole time. I want to make sure.
I'll just go with the awful built-in microphone because for some reason my Scarlett has died. But I hope.
Oh, no.
But yeah, it's not picking up on the built-in mic. So apologies for my audio. For some reason, it has died all of a sudden.
Fine to me.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you're okay on the other end, but hopefully, all of you can hear me okay. It's weird. I'm not sure how that happened because I had just had everything set to go beforehand. That's why we do the tests.
For plans.
Yes. So let's get into this, shall we? So the Sharks make a trade last night.
Can you hear Puckguy? Let me know. I know there's a delay here, but I just want to make sure that before we get super into the weeds here, that it's not just me having a one-sided conversation.
Yeah, no, it's weird that for some reason Ecamm is not picking up my microphone anymore. Not sure why, but we'll do what we can do here and do our best diligence to go from here. But for your
apparently now you're super loud.
Now I'm super loud. Oh, that's terrific. That never gets mentioned on this show.
Yeah.
But
live YouTube, people, live YouTube.
Yeah,
the choice of live YouTube.
So I'll try to balance it as much as possible here. So last night, Sharks make a trade for to trade Matt Nieto and Ryan Merkley over to the Colorado Avalanche. In exchange, you're getting Jacob MacDonald, defenseman, and forward Martin Kaut, who was a former first-round pick himself.
Same draft year.
Yeah, same draft year. Hasn't quite worked out the way for Colorado. Initially, like, okay, you get Merkley's request made. Matt Nieto, very familiar with the Colorado Avalanche organization. But what was your initial take on it?
I mean, again, like, with the entire Mike Grier era, I continue to be whelmed. Like, I'm not, like, I'm still waiting for that hell yeah moment with Mike Grier. I'm whelmed. Like, this trade isn't super fancy. I don't think the Sharks did incredibly well here. And I think that's the one thing that's hard to, I think, convey on Twitter sometimes, is because, like, I don't love this trade, but I can understand the pieces, and I can understand what the idea is behind it. But it doesn't mean that I'm, like, super enthused by the trade, right?
Right.
And I think when you're looking at a guy for Kaut, like, if you kind of break this trade down into, like, its pieces, you've got Kaut for Merkley, which is kind of a problem for a problem. A guy who, probably could use a clean slate in Kaut. And the same for Ryan Merkley. Ryan Merkley probably could use a clean slate as well. So I think that part of the trade, it makes sense for me. Now, there are going to be people that will rightfully bring up that you could have had Martin Kaut on waivers, a couple of times this season. That's true. But also, I would also point out that the Sharks are kind of hamstrung right now because they are at the 50 contract limit. So you just can't pick a guy up on waivers when you're maxed out on contracts without making a corresponding move. But I still think it should be said, like, this is a player you could have had for free. Ryan Merkley, again, we've talked a lot about Ryan Merkley,
right? And I
on this channel, especially this year.
Yep.
And without getting super into the weeds on Ryan Merkley's a player that I like, but I understand why he's polarizing.
Okay.
I don't think Ryan Merkley's value was super high at this point, right? So I if you're upset that Kaut is kind of the return for Merkley, I get it, but I don't think Merkley's value is super high right now. I think he was a negative asset that the Sharks were, I think, fortunate to find a home for as quickly as they did. Now, Jacob MacDonald, I always want to call him Joey for some reason. Jacob MacDonald,
Avalanche, or the old Mighty Duck forward, right?
Yeah. Jacob MacDonald trading, basically swapping Jacob MacDonald for Matt Nieto. It's a little perplexing, right? I think in Jacob MacDonald, you have a guy who's played pretty consistently on the third pair for the Colorado Avalanche all season. And I think the fact that we got an immediate move to move Nick Cechek back down to the Barracuda, I think tells you all you really need to know about what they saw in a guy like Jason MacDonald. Again, the Sharks have Jason MacDonald in spades. This is a guy they have a lot of in Harrington and stuff, but I don't think that they were overly impressed with what they got from Nick Cechek, based on his limited play in the NHL, even though he's been up for a while.
Yeah.
And the Barracuda could use all the help they can get on their blue line right now. So I like the move from that respect. I don't think Nick Cechek was doing particularly well in the NHL. I think it was a guy who's playing a little bit over his head, which wasn't, this was going into the season, right? Like, that was the whole thing, was the Sharks were not going to put guys in situations that they weren't ready for. And I think they were asking a little much from Nick Cechek. So Matt Nieto, though, like, I think it's a piece I think you gave up. I'm not the biggest Matt Nieto fan. Like, I don't think he's a bad dude or anything, right? And I understand why people are sentimentally attached to Matt Nieto, but, like, as a player, I still think, though, you kind of overpaid to get another seventh defenseman.
Yeah, I think also it helps that isn't Darren Helm going to be out for a while for Colorado, so
Sure.
Nieto can fill in that form. By the way, got the mic fixed hopefully there, so apologies for everyone for that. Uh, as for MacDonald, I think they saw that turnover in Detroit from Nick Cicek that set up a goal. That was a rough one, and he's had his ups and downs with the Sharks this year. And let's be honest, the Kuhre need some depth defensemen.
Oh, they need reinforcements on the blue line like no one else. Yeah.
Yeah. My concern though is number one. Let's hope this doesn't come back to bite us in the butt when Ryan Merkley flourishes with the Colorado Eagles or eventually with the Avalanche.
I mean, that could happen, but at the same time, like, and I understand that concern, and I know that there's I saw a lot of giddy Colorado Avalanche fans that were just really super excited about getting Ryan Merkley. And again, I'm not gonna kick Ryan Merkley now that he's out the door. Like, this is a player that I do like, but at the same time, I think that's still a big if he does flourish and the Sharks come back and this trade doesn't look good down the road, it doesn't. It matters, but it doesn't, because they were kind of over about Ryan Merkley wanted out.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that kind of weighs down things. Plus, he's been scratched for over almost a month since he requested the trade, so he hasn't been in the lineup or anything for the Kuhre.
Yeah.
So
Ricky in the chat brings up something that I did want to get to. If you want to highlight his most recent comment there.
Ricky Bartonslager saying, I disagree that it was an overpayment, Ian. We got a fifth for Cogliano, and he scores more than Nieto. I'd rather get a guy who can play NHL minutes than a fifth or sixth round pick.
Yeah, and I was gonna get there, and I do agree. I think that if you don't I can understand people being like, well, we didn't even get a draft pick out of this. But again, for Matt Nieto alone, what are you getting for Matt Nieto alone? Probably, your fifth, maybe a fourth. I think the Sharks addressed a need. Yeah, if that. I think the Sharks identified a need and they addressed it, right? They looked at their blue line. We don't know what's going on with Šimek. They've had some injuries on their blue line. They have guys that are playing a little over their head. I don't have an issue of them addressing a need here. Again, I don't think at the end of the day, this trade isn't going to be one that I think we're going to super look back, unless Ryan Merkley becomes an absolute superstar, right? Then maybe we'll come back and we'll grump about this trade in a year or 2 years. But this isn't the trade that we're going to be talking about in 2 years from this trade deadline.
Right. And that's the tough part, but because it'll be something else, and PJ48 kind of wanting to frame it a little bit different, saying, do you guys think a better framing of this would be instead of struggling first, and essentially for Merkley and for Kaut, would be D for D, Merkley for MacDonald, and a young forward prospect for Nieto.
You could frame it that way. I mean, I think you could frame it. You could frame that in a lot of ways. I think the way that my silly brain works, I try to figure out what's the, you try and dissect what's moving and kind of what's addressing what. I think you could frame this in a lot of different ways. I don't think that this trade, again, it's not a trade that I'm super excited about. I don't think the Sharks. I think the Sharks just did okay here. They just did okay. They didn't do great. This isn't a great trade for the Sharks. It's an okay trade for the Sharks.
Yeah, for now. And like Ricky's also mentioning right now, you would have said Sumel for Barabanov was no big deal until.
Hey, look at if Martin Kaut can find his game in San Jose and it, and it works out for everyone involved. I mean, that would be fantastic. I'm not super high on Kaut as a prospect at this point. But again, like Ryan Merkley was basically had a foot out the door, and they had to address that problem. You have, again, problems on your blue line with the team as currently constructed, and you had to address it. Matt Nieto was a guy who was probably out the door by the trade deadline anyway. Again, guys on expiring contracts on low deals are going to be the guys that I think a lot of teams are going to be looking for. So, I mean, again, like all these things on their own, I think.
Right.
I just don't know if I like the whole package.
Yeah. So Kaut was up.
If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think I get you there. Kaut was up with the Avalanche for 27 games this season, getting a goal, 2 assists in that stretch. He's Czech, so I would think, kind of dangling that the carrot to have him play with Tomas Hertl might be a big thing. But I hear that MacDonald's headed to Carolina for the game on Friday against the Hurricanes. Yeah. I'm assuming Kaut is headed to the Barracuda.
He's headed to the Barracuda, yes.
So be on the lookout for that. The other thing, too, in that sense is while Cicek goes back down to the CUDA, it makes you wonder how serious Radim Šimek's injury is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the big question right now. Is obviously what is the health of Radim Šimek going to be going forward, which is super unfortunate that we're having this conversation again with Šimek.
It's very unfortunate.
Like, I feel bad for Šimek because I think Šimek's had a pretty good year, but I mean, this inability again, hockey is a contact sport. I don't fault a player for getting injured. Like, I've never been I'm not going to get mad at Šimek because he's injured. It's a contact sport. This is a very fast game and people hit each other very, very hard. But I think for Šimek, who I think finally kind of found his game again this season, to have this happen is unfortunate. But on the plus side, Nikolai Knyzhov played last night for the Barracuda, and I thought, other than a scrambly first shift, I thought once he got settled into the game, he looked great. So obviously, him on just a conditioning stint right now, I think he will be back up at some point, even if Šimek goes down. So, if Šimek gets healthy, you just send MacDonald through waivers. But I think it's a nice insurance policy in MacDonald to have for the Sharks to finish up the season.
True. Always a backup plan just to have in case, let Cicek, have his growing pains with the CUDA and make the CUDA a little bit stronger with Kaut in there. And,
because you got to remember, the AHL playoffs are different than the NHL playoffs. Like, even though the Sharks the Barracuda, are in, where are they right now? They are in the last playoffs, which is 7th.
Yeah.
They're technically a playoff team, so
okay,
yes,
wait
they
a
are.
minute. Okay. So, I'm looking at it right now. So there's 7 spots in the Pacific
because
Division
there's there is a play-in round, a qualifying round. I think they're best of 3s. It's a whole thing in the AHL. So the Barracuda technically are trying to hold off the Henderson Silver Knights for the last playoff spot in the Pacific Division. Because again, the AHL playoffs are crazy. Which I think if you are a person who's, not to get too off track here, but if you are a person who is nervous about the NHL expanding the playoff format, this is where you test things out. So I don't know, something to keep an eye on anyway.
In a 10-team Pacific Division in the AHL. And you just mentioned about Knyzhov. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Knyzhov looked good last night. I thought after a scrambly first shift, I think how for this guy who hasn't played a game in 2 years, I would have been just full of piss and vinegar too. A little bit scrambly at first, but I thought once he settled into the game, I thought he played a really solid game for the Barracuda last night. I think the Barracuda played really well overall last night. They did lose in the shootout, but one of their better losses of the season.
Yeah, and they even got a point out of that. So coming off of that, along with a big win against San Diego, where we saw the debut of Kyle Quisquolo.
Yep.
So slowly making some moves for the Kuhre to be a better team. As for the Sharks, they're still going and going, and you have a logjam of forwards. Ricky even mentioning about having sent Ozzy down to Wichita.
Yeah,
That's gotta be frustrating for him too.
Sure. I mean, as I'm sure it is for Strauss-Mann, who's been making the Wichita trip nonstop. I think, look, when it came to Ryan Merkley, you have to remember this was a player who was on a lot of teams' do not drafts lists. There was only so many places that were going to take a swing on Merkley. So I think getting anything from Merkley at this point, I think, is a win. Like, yeah, you had to take a forward instead, but I think, again, like, players are going to get moved as the deadline approaches, and I think some players will get a chance to come up, and I think that will settle things down with the Barracuda forward group. But I think to get anything from Merkley at all at this point, I think the Sharks the Sharks kind of had their hands tied here as far as what kind of a return they were going to get.
Yeah. So that's the situation in hand for that move. More on the way, most likely, and it seems,
I would assume so.
Yeah, I would assume so. This might have been a precursor to everything, and let's be honest, Nieto moving is probably a few weeks ahead before the trade deadline. So AJ mentioning silver lining for trading Nieto, I imagine Gregor will play more games.
I don't know. Can Kevin LeBanc and Noah Gregor play in the same lineup? I remain.
Can they play on the
unconvinced.
PK now? I mean, Matt Nieto is one of those guys that were big on this PK unit that's been top 5 all year.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, I don't like kicking people on the way out the door. I understand why people are sentimental towards Matt Nieto. I have players that I'm sentimental towards too, although I try not to be.
Exactly.
But it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business, right? And I think like Matt Nieto was one of the guys who just wasn't going to finish the season here. So
no,
it is what it is.
And let's be honest, long term, he was here 3 seasons, and we did not get a sequel to Holiday Sweater. So
true. Yes. I mean, what good is Matt Nieto anyway at this point?
Oh wow.
So I'm just gonna get hell on Twitter now.
So my question to you now is that as we transition over, I mean, so much Timo talk. I mean, AJ and Jerk we've talked about on After Dark many times.
Yep.
It seems like there's 28 teams interested in trading for Timo Meier. Hell,
well they should be.
I mean, hell, even Buffalo is interested, which kind of would be stinging a little bit in my mind if you move him to Buffalo, even if you get a decent haul.
That's a lottery pick.
Would you go for it? Hell, let's make sure we
I don't know. Like, Buffalo's not making the playoffs, right? Like, I'm not wrong here. I haven't looked at the standings in a minute.
Buffalo. I mean, we've all seen what Tage Thompson's done this year.
Sure, yeah. Like, Buffalo's a team that needs something to get them over the hump, right? Okay, so Buffalo's a point out of the. They're a few points out of the wild card.
3 points out of wild card.
But again, I think for a team like Buffalo, I could understand why they would be interested. Because look at Buffalo's a team that wants to get back into the playoffs. Like, eventually, your goal should be to win hockey games and eventually win championships. Buffalo has spent an unreal amount of time, being lottery pick after lottery pick after lottery pick. Like, at some point, you have to start moving forward. So for them to want Timo Meier, it makes a lot of sense to me. And again, like, that's a high lottery pick, but that's still a pick in the lottery. If you get that pick, and if you can get that pick out of them, and you can get it so it's not lottery protected, I think that's a fine place to move Timo Meier to, if that's the play. if that's what the Sharks want to do.
Yeah, that would be a massive one. I mean, could you even consider a blockbuster? I mean, the Buffalo has currently, according to Cap Friendly, $18 million of cap space that could easily take Meier and Karlsson.
Let's not get crazy.
I'm just, hey, if it's trade speculation,
okay, okay.
I'm about to piss off Ian.
Yes, but I will remind you that Erik Karlsson decides where he's going.
Very true. And would he want to go to Buffalo and want to go to a team that's?
Do you want to go to a bubble? Like,
a
again,
bubble
I don't
team.
think Erik Karlsson's going anywhere. But do you want to go to a bubble team, or are you going to leave to go to a contender? I don't know. I really don't want to get in the weeds on Erik Karlsson because I don't think there's I will be shocked, and I will happily come on here and tell you how much of an idiot I am if Erik Karlsson gets traded. But until that happens, I don't want to talk about it because I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a lot of wasted air time.
And considering
nothing.
And considering the semi-heir apparent in Merkley just got traded, you really don't have an offensive-minded defenseman, which this team in the past loved for over a decade and a half.
Yeah, but I don't think the Sharks saw Merkley as the heir apparent. If the Sharks saw Ryan Merkley that way, then Ryan Merkley's figuring it out on the Sharks this year.
Fair enough. Ricky mentioning, well, we have Artemi Knyzhov.
He's not the heir apparent either.
No. AJ imagining the alliances: Esimont, Couture, Barabanov, Meier, Hurdle, LeBanc, and Gregor will get a look whenever LeBanc pisses off. Yeah, and like we said, this could be just the starting of everything. You got to look at like Nick Bonino, who's been on a nice run lately.
Yeah.
You look at, does anybody take a sniff at Evgeny Sveshnikov?
Again, I think like there's some guys that I think might generate some interest, and maybe some guys that will surprise us. I think going back to Timo Meier for a minute though, because I think something that needs to be said out loud a little more often, and I am seeing this on Twitter a lot too. But I think it's something that, like, because a lot of people are like talking about like trade destinations like New Jersey and stuff, and it's like, oh well, but if and you see like Jersey fans being like, oh well, if they ask for Hughes, Nemec, or I can't remember the other dude's name, it's like you just hang up the phone. It's like, that's fine. Like in New Jersey, maybe they should hang up the phone at that point. But I think if you're the Sharks, like, something that's not said out loud enough, the Sharks don't have to trade Timo Meier. So like, if I'm Mike Grier, and I'm not, again, like, Mike Grier era so far is the era of whelmed, the Sharks can't whelm me with a Timo Meier trade. No. But I don't think you don't have to move Timo Meier. And I think that the Sharks should acknowledge that, and they should go into negotiations saying, look, we're going to ask for a top price, and if you don't think Timo Meier is worth it, it's fine. We can keep him. It's not a big deal. We don't have to move Timo Meier. So wherever you're sending him, whether it be Buffalo, like I said, you can go to Buffalo, and who's a team, on the wild card hunt right now, but they could be a lottery team, and you can move up 10 spaces in the lottery. Like if Buffalo says, well, we'll give you our first round pick, but we want a lottery protected, you hang up, because again, you don't have to trade Timo Meier. Timo, you can wait till the draft. I mean, I think as you get closer to free agency, as you get closer to him potentially signing his qualifying offer, I think your leverage gets a little more wishy-washy. But right now, the Sharks don't have to trade Timo Meier. If you are not going to give up a top price for Timo Meier, Mike Grier should hang up the fucking phone.
Agreed. I mean, unless it's something that just is knock it out of the ballpark.
You have to, exactly. Yeah, this is a trade where you have to
win.
Like, this has to be the Mike Grier hell yeah moment if you're going to move Timo Meier. And if he goes to a place like New Jersey and you don't extract one of their 3 best prospects for him, you fucked up. Period.
And Tim Burke was scouting the New Jersey Devils, as reported by the Fourth Period. So, I mean, and of course, there's also talk about the Rangers being interested. I mean, everybody's interested. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle wants to go for a home run, making a playoff push. Could they put him in? I mean, who knows? I mean, to complement.
Oh yeah, I
Matty
think like
Beniers.
look at Timo Meier is a hell of a player, and I think whoever gets him is going to be lucky to have him, including the Sharks. If the Sharks happen to keep him, that's fine too. But I think if you move him, you have to get max value for him.
Yeah. Indeed. All right, I think that gives us a nice conclusion to this episode. So in case you missed anything or you want to watch this again, check us out on tealtownusa.com or your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple, Google, YouTube, SoundCloud, TuneIn, iHeart, Odyssey, Spotify. Of course, if you're on the YouTube channel right now, leave us a comment down below as to what you think of this Matt Nieto trade. Along with now that Ryan Merkley is also off to Colorado, share your thoughts on what the Sharks should do next in the comments section down below. So definitely check us out, and we appreciate each and every one of you subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed already, smash that subscribe button as always. So with Ian, I'm Erik. Thank you very much. Ian, your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. When the Sharks do good, it's good. This was just okay. This was just okay.
So essentially, when the Sharks do okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That when the Sharks do okay, it's okay. I don't know, man. Like, again, like I just want like for Mike Grier just to give me that hell yeah moment. That's all I want, man. That's all I want. That's all anyone can hope for at this point. Like the season's basically we're just playing out the string now. We know where the season's going. Give me a hell yeah moment. I need one.
I think we all do this season. So for Ian, I am Puck Guy. We'll be back with you following Sharks and Hurricanes. I hear Brent Burns is making dinner tonight for all the players. So I'm afraid what kind of is it a ground buffalo? Who knows? Until then, we'll see you following Sharks and Hurricanes. Keep it real. Keep it teal. Keep it real teal. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for watching.